Hey everybody, what is up? It's Antonio. Welcome back to another episode here on Gladiator Disc Golf. Now, as you can tell, this format looks very different from the normal videos. If you remember, about a year ago, I started a series called Mail Monday, and it was something I was really into. I really enjoyed it, but it basically fell off the map. There's not a whole lot of videos in that series. I think it's only 5 episodes, and so that makes this episode 6. And I am super excited to bring this back with a completely different format because I really loved that idea of Mail Monday. And basically, the whole concept behind Mail Monday is that we talk about disc golf current events and news. And so today, we're going to start with talking about the 2023 sponsorship announcements, those who are available for new contracts, those who have signed new contracts, and a handful of people, really just 2, that I think might get some extensions or new deals even though they are still in the middle of their contracts with their current sponsorships. We have a lot of names to get through, so let's go ahead and let's do it. And if at any point in the video you disagree or agree or have a different idea of what you might think might happen with the pro and their new sponsorship, go ahead and comment down below. And if you enjoyed this video and the format and you love that we're having this conversation, go ahead and give it a like at any time. All right, let's talk about our first pro. Even though her contract was up this season, I was not at all ready to hear about Maria Oliva leaving Innova. She is one of the staples on their FPO team, and she really is a great player overall. She is a very, very good competitor. And as far as I know, she's thrown Innova basically her entire career. And so hearing her leave Innova was pretty shocking. And so I've been trying to rack my brain and just think, like, where could she possibly go? And quite frankly, I have 2 ideas. Now, they're very, very similar ideas, but nonetheless, 2 ideas. So Maria Oliva is from Rockwall, Texas, which is just outside of Dallas, Texas. And you can already see where I'm going if you've been following disc golf for the last couple of months. I think Maria might end up with one of the 2 big Texas companies. My first initial thought was Mint, simply because they've been around longer than Lone Star Discs, and they don't really have a top-tier talent on tour. They do have sponsored players, but they really don't have someone who is basically leading their team and can really put them as a company on the map with the entire nation. So I think Mint could be a great landing spot for her. They're located in Austin, Texas, so not quite Dallas, but a very much a Texas company molded by MVP. Now, of course, I've already mentioned the second company, Lone Star Discs. They have been making a lot of signings, some of which we'll be getting to a little bit later in this video, but I think that is definitely a possibility for Maria Oliva. They have added a lot of MPO talent. They've added some FPO talent, but none of the likes of Maria Oliva on their FPO team. She would really elevate their FPO team, and they have so many discs that whether she was on the 90% LSD bag or she was like Nikko throwing 100% Lone Star discs, she would be able to throw a lot of their stuff. They have everything from understable to overstable, so definitely something I think for her to consider. Now remember, these are all predictions, so there's really nothing well-founded in this. It's just simply my thoughts. Now, the other big name that came out to me, and this is probably the biggest name that's really still on the free agent market when you really consider things, Anthony Barela. As you heard, Anthony Barela has concluded his time with Innova Discs. It sounds like it was more one-sided where he was leaving Innova, not Innova dropping him. There are a couple reasons why I think Anthony decided to leave Innova, and I think it really has to do with the fact that he's close to graduating college, and he's ready to go full-time tour. I mean, think about how much he has competed and just how well he's done for someone who's been going to college the last 3 to 4 years. And so it's really insane to think about what he'll be capable of touring full-time. And I think he was probably wanting to find a company that's going to support him full-time. Now, Anthony Barela crushes, like absolutely crushes, and he has such good form. And I know people called him for a long time Little Macbeth. He's thrown a lot of the same discs Macbeth has thrown with Innova, and his form is very similar to Paul Macbeth. But here's the thing. I don't think he's going to go to Discraft. I think going to Discraft would just be straight up following in the steps of Paul and not making his own way. So I actually would be shocked if he goes to Discraft at all. First off, they have so many pros, so many tour series. They obviously make a ton of money, so they could definitely afford him and pay for him. But I think it would be awesome to see a fourth Crush Boy. I really think that Discmania could be interested in Anthony Barela to join the Sky team with Simon Lizotte, Eagle McMahon, and Kyle Klein. It is probably the most elite team in all of disc golf because there's only 3 people on it, and all of them throw really far, and all are really good. And I definitely think now that Discmania is on its own and has a lot of overstable molds, and it just seems like such a good fit. I really think Anthony Barela could go to Discmania. You heard it here first if it happens. So let's go ahead and let's start with Paige Shue, formerly Paige Bjerkas. Now, if you're brand new to disc golf, you may not really know who this is, and that's because Paige Shue has been only touring a little bit the last year or two. A couple of years ago, she married Grady Shue, and they basically started a family, and so she hasn't really toured a whole lot, even though she is a 2018 world champion for FPO. She's a free agent now, and her and Dynamic Disc did not come to an agreement on a deal. Maybe she wanted to leave, maybe she wanted to find something better, maybe they weren't paying her enough. Who really knows all the details? I don't think that she has shared because she's been with Dynamic Disc for so long. It definitely seems like things ended well, potentially for a comeback tour in a couple years. But before that happens, I think Paige is going to go to one of 2 places. I'm thinking Infinite and Innova. And there are a couple reasons for that. Even though she is 2018 world champ, she hasn't really played a lot. But that world champion label is highly marketable and is definitely something that makes it easy to sell discs. Whether you're brand new to the sport or you've known who she is for a while, it definitely makes it easy to sell discs. And not many times are you going to find a world champ who is low cost. High marketability, low cost. That's basically the perfect recipe for signing a new sponsorship. The next one is Gavin Babcock. I was pretty shocked to see that he left Prodigy. It seemed like things were going really well, but I think he's wanting to kind of step out there and make a bigger name for himself. A lot of his Prodigy teammates performed really well this past season, and while Gavin won one of the biggest ace pots in Skins history, actually probably the biggest ace pot in Skins history, that was really what seemed to be the highlight of the season. So I think it'd be great for him to kind of get into some new territory. Sometimes a change in environment is exactly what a player like Babcock needs to really take the next step in the game and really start performing well. Now, since he's not a top tier pro, he hasn't won a lot, he's very rarely been on lead cards that I've seen, I definitely think he is low cost, but highly marketable because he's a young gun, he can throw really far, has a pretty consistent game, and has really good clean form with a wrestling background. So a lot of cool things coming into play with that. So I think he might go MVP. Other than it just sounding right for someone like him, I definitely think that they have a lot of discs that he can throw, from overstable discs to really help with his power to understable discs where he can really finesse shots. If you haven't seen the Skins ace that he made, he basically hyzer flipped an M3, which is not necessarily an overstable disc, but he hyzer flipped it, so he really likes those kinds of throws and those mid-ranges, and MVP has a lot of mid-ranges between them and their affiliates. So I can definitely see Gavin going to someplace like MVP, but something else I considered is that one of the biggest names in all of disc golf, if not the biggest name in disc golf, is losing a lot of players. And that's Innova. And I think Innova could bring in Babcock, kind of replenish their MPO side, and kind of help with competition, because right now they're basically all in on Calvin Heimberg. And trust me, there is nothing wrong with going all in on Heimberg, but you need to kind of fill out the rest of your team. Innova used to dominate the top 10 in world rankings, and now Calvin's the only top 10 player sponsored by Innova. And so that's definitely something that I think they would like to change. And I'm not saying that Babcock is necessarily going to be a top 10 player, but building that team and adding more people is the first step to doing that. So I think getting Babcock for probably a pretty low price and get him for a couple years to help him figure out which discs he likes. A couple Tour Series discs could be a really good fit. The next one is a surprise for a lot of people, including this FPO player herself. Erika Stinchcomb is no longer sponsored by Westside Discs. She was 100% not expecting it if you've read her Instagram post. Very, very shocking to her and to a lot of people. And one thing that I think is quite the tea in disc golf is that Missy Gannon commented on the disc and said that this is just like something that Trilogy would do. Because it's basically what happened to her. She got dropped out of the blue and Discraft picked her up, and now you have Erika Stinchcomb. Now, I don't think Erika's going to go to Discraft because I think she has some really good connections with a couple other sponsorships, mainly MVP. If you've listened to post-production with the two hot geese, you know I'm talking about Erika Stinchcomb and Madison Walker, and Madison is currently sponsored by MVP. So it's highly likely that they can pick up Erika Stinchcomb too, because that would be a great pairing. They're already a great pair on the mic, and now they'd be a great pair out on the course. They're really good friends. I think it would be a really good setup, and they'd be able to get her on their team, help sell some discs. She had the Sword from Westside, was her most popular disc, and it's a really, really great disc if you've never thrown it. Now, these other players are technically unsigned because their contracts have expired, but I'm not really expecting them to leave their current sponsor. So we'll start with James Conrad. He had a 2-year deal with MVP. He has multiple discs in his own personal lineup, and he's been throwing pretty well. He's obviously won the World Championship 2 years ago, and now this past season wasn't all that great. Didn't really probably play up to his standards and a lot of the standards and expectations that we had as fans, but he is still a fantastic disc golfer, no doubt about it. James Conrad is awesome, one of my favorites. That being said, he's up for a new deal, most likely re-signing with MVP. I really can't see him going elsewhere, especially when he's had so much success and has found a manufacturer that is basically working with him to make a lineup and make a lot of cool discs. And then the final one that I wanted to talk about in this unsigned category is almost world champion Aaron Gossage. I'm sure we were all watching the World Championship this year, and it was a nail biter between Gossage and Macbeth, both Discraft sponsored players. Now, technically, Gossage's contract expires at the end of 2022. I am fully expecting him to re-sign. I just think that Discraft has found a diamond in the rough, and he has a lot of talent, a lot of skill, and a great future in disc golf. And there's just no reason to let someone like Gossage go. He just has way too much marketability, way too much upside, and they can definitely afford to keep him. And because of that, I just don't see them going for some of these other players that I've listed. So I think Gossage re-signs with Discraft. Now, over the last couple of weeks, we've heard of some new players leave sponsorships and sign new sponsorships. So we have 3 new sponsorships that I want to mention real quick before we get to some improved deals that I think might happen. So first is Thomas Gilbert. Thomas threw Prodigy for the last couple of years. And one common thread with Prodigy discs is that you never really know how stable or understable a disc is going to be when you get it, even though it might be an overstable mold. There's a little bit of inconsistency in their production. And so I've heard some people joke around that he can never find a Prodigy disc overstable enough for him. And so because of that, Thomas went out on his own, or maybe I shouldn't say because of that. It's possible there for other reasons. I know the Ultiworld article talked about how the contract with ThoughtSpace Athletics was much better in favor of him than his potential contract with Prodigy. So there seemed to be some money involved as well to help make his decision. What's interesting about this deal is that it's only a 50% TSA bag, which is not really the normal thing for manufacturers. I mean, LSD I thought was pretty interesting, offering 90% LSD bags for their players, whether it's the Ranger team or their top pros. But TSA decided 50-50, so you have to throw 50% TSA, 50% open. Something that's interesting in that article is that TSA says that they're totally fine with this because all it does is it highlights the molds that are fantastic. And they don't have as many molds as some other companies, But basically their whole premise is, if when you hear Thomas Gilbert throwing X, Y, and Z molds, you're going to be really interested in those molds if it made his bag when he only has to have 50%. So that's definitely some interesting logic. I definitely think it could work out with a player like Thomas Gilbert because he has a lot of power and can definitely sling some overstable discs out in the market. So I definitely think that's a good pickup. The other two players, Emerson Keith and Nikko Locastro, signed with Lone Star Discs. Now it's my understanding that Emerson Keith is 90% Lone Star Discs, while Nikko Locastro is on a multi-year deal, 100% Lone Star Discs. Now, I definitely think that it's possible Emerson ends up throwing 100% simply because Lone Star has a ton of molds. They already have 20 plus molds and they're looking to basically double that over the next year, year and a half. They've already come out with 2 or 3 molds here at the end of the year of 2022. So it's highly likely that Emerson could probably just end up throwing all Lone Star as well. So those are the 3 players I wanted to touch on that have already signed with new manufacturers. And I definitely think that there's a lot of upside in all of these deals. I'm very excited to see Emerson, who's a Texas native, throwing Lone Star. I really hope that Nikko has a great year in all aspects of the game. And I'm excited to see just what Thomas Gilbert and TSA can do. I think there's a lot of upside and potential, but there's just a lot of question marks on exactly what all that is going to look like. Now the improved deals. There are 2 players that I wanted to touch on, 2 players that really shined this past year that although their contracts aren't necessarily up, well, we have seen in disc golf before, 1, players break contracts early, but 2, manufacturers basically restructure new deals. We saw with Paul Macbeth after 1 or 2 years with Discraft, went from a 4-year deal worth $1 million to a 10-year deal worth $10 million. The first player I wanted to talk about that could get an improved deal is Valerie Mandujano. So I originally had some thoughts planned about Valerie Mandujano, and then this morning, January 1st, she drops that, or a couple days ago, she and Mason basically say that they're leaving Dynamic Discs, and no clues yet as to where they are going. So obviously Valerie's not restructuring her deal. That being said, I don't have any ideas yet where she's going, other than I don't think she's going to go back to Innova. That just wouldn't make a whole lot of sense being gone for just 1 year, unless they were able to kind of poach her with a whole lot of money since she played really well. That would be like the big caveat to going back to Innova. I imagine she's going elsewhere. Maybe Prodigy, since they have like 0 FPO right now. That might be an option, but other than that, I haven't really thought too much about it to be able to know where she might go. But I definitely think it is interesting that she left already, especially following the clip where I just said players will sometimes leave in the middle of their contracts. So let me know in the comments below where you think Valerie's gonna go. A shot in the dark, maybe Prodigy, but really I have no idea because I wasn't expecting this. And then the final player that I wanted to talk about for the entire video and for the improved deals is none other than 2022 USDGC champ, Gannon Buhr. Gannon Buhr has always thrown Prodigy discs. He loves Prodigy discs, and they have a great player in Gannon and a future with him in the long run. So I definitely think that it's highly likely they'll restructure his deal. There are no real rumors on this. This is definitely just me kind of going out there and reaching for something to see if it might happen. But I wouldn't be surprised if it does. I mean, we see it in sports all the time when there's 1 year left on the deal and a player performs really well. You know that they'll be asking for more once they reach free agency. And if you're Prodigy Discs and you're thinking like a manufacturer, a sports company, hopefully you are, you know that if you let Gannon Buhr hit free agency, it's going to probably cost you more to get him back than if you restructure and give him an extension now. So I definitely think that is a possibility for him. I mean, they have lost a couple players in Babcock and Thomas Gilbert, so there's definitely some capital that Prodigy has that they can push towards Gannon Buhr. And I love Kevin Jones. I think he's a great player. He definitely had an off year, but if you're going to throw as much money at Kevin Jones as you did, there's no reason why you can't give something close like that to Gannon Buhr when he's won a USDGC and he's still in high school. So that's all I have to say about that. I'm really interested to see if anything happens with him. It's kind of a shot in the dark. We haven't heard any rumors, nothing like that, but I definitely think it's something that can happen. Now, if you're wondering where I got some of this information, I'm going to put the link in the description to ultaworld.com. They have a lot of the contracts, values when available, but years and the type of deal that was made, whether it was new, extension, something like that. And if there's an article or something written about the new contract, they have that available as well. Definitely something that's interesting to keep an eye on. As you'll see when you go to that link, we didn't talk about everyone, but we talked about a lot of the bigger names that we see. Let me know, guys, in the comments below where you think some of these players are going. If you think I'm absolutely crazy with my predictions, or if you think there's actually some credibility to them, let me know in the comments. And also, don't forget to like this video, like it, if you enjoyed this kind of format and this discussion. I really want to do more of these, and I really enjoy just talking disc golf. These are not really focused on being like tutorials and all that kind of thing. This is just talking latest news. So when we have tournaments coming up again in the springtime and late winter, it'll be really fun to talk with you guys about all of that. Well, that's basically it, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, have a great round.